Hello. So three-legged OAuth authentication is not meant to be automated by definition. This is one of the reasons why it requires a UI interaction. API Fortress itself is not capable of performing that authentication. However, we created a companion application that helps API Fortress in that process. In this example, we are looking at the Facebook authentication. So the 3LOA container is capable of performing the OAuth authentication via the UI, but also exposes an API so that API Fortress can consume it. As you can see, we can pass a number of parameters to this API, such as the username, the password, and then a number of other fields that are XPath selectors to the fields of the forms themselves. For example, the username field, the password field, the login button, the authorization button, and then obviously the authorization URL and the token URL. Now, once 3LOA is done authenticating itself, the token payload variable should contain what it is returned from the authentication process. One of these fields is indeed the access token that then we reuse, as you can see here, in a subsequent API call to Facebook, so that the call should be authenticated. And in this example, we finally validate a couple of fields that are returned. Or we run it. And a few seconds later, you can see that the first post is actually done. That is the authentication, as you can see. And here's the response where we have success and we have the access token. In the subsequent call, we make the call and we reuse the access token to perform the call. And then, as you would expect, we have the actual output that is the profile information. And then we can eventually validate them. Okay, now let's try to spice this test up a bit. So assume that you don't want to go through the authentication process every time the test runs. How do you do that? And also keep in mind that the token will survive quite some time. So let's add a component after this one, and it's going to be the key value store. We're going to set it. And we're going to use the very same name of the payload for the token exchange for simplicity. Okay. Now this will set the token payload in the key value store. The key value store will last 24 hours. The next thing I'm going to do is going to add a component before. I'm going to load the same token payload variable, assign it to the same thing. Okay, now if token payload exists in the key value store, then the token payload variable will have a value, otherwise it will be null. Therefore, if not token payload, so if token payload does not exist in the key value store, it is null, I'm going to perform the authentication call, and we're good with that. Otherwise, we will trust the key value store that was previously recorded. So my expectations here is if I run this, the first time the authentication call will be performed. Okay, so we have the authentication call and then the API call as expected. If I run this again, it should be way faster. Yes, indeed, because no authentication call has been done as the test loaded the access token from the key value store.